Hello and welcome to HyzerMedia's coverage of the Canby West Open final round from Wilmington, Delaware. Thank you to our Patreon family for supporting this coverage, and thank you to you for joining us. We are here in Wilmington, Delaware, like I said, taking a look at the final round of the Canby West Open. Chris Villa with the hot round, first round, -8. Brian O'Neill only one stroke off of him. Third on the card is Connor Bartley, shooting a 5 down the first round. And the tournament director, Jordan Winward, shooting a 4 down, making this lead card. And we're going to get right into it on hole 1. It's a par 4 at 456 feet. Pretty much a straight shot off the tee. Creek bisecting the fairway. If you stay to the right, you won't have to worry about that. Creek is out of bounds, so trying to cross probably on your second throw instead of your first, and pitching up to see if you can start this second round off right. So Chris Villa, who we've seen quite a few times in HyzerMedia's coverage, is going to get us started off once again. Goes with a nice turnover. Looks like it went down a little bit early, but he's through the gap, so he should be able to manufacture something from there. Brian O'Neill setting up second shot for this round. Got a lot more height and a lot more distance. Beautiful line by Brian. Getting all the way through the gap to the right side past those initial set of trees. Should set himself up for a pretty good second shot. And fortunate kick for Connor Bartley, didn't kick left where there's not much, just kind of gently landed on the right side, so we'll see what he has from there. And rounding off our card, Jordan Winward. And just a bit wide, kick down, probably similar position, maybe a couple feet closer to the basket than Connor. Ooh. Nice little rollout though. After a couple little tree kisses, Connor's not obviously as far up the fairway, but clear for his third shot. Jordan pretty much just pitching out from the weeds on the left side. Chris Villa, not the distance he was looking for, but beautiful line getting up to just about circle's edge. Maybe a little bit of a obstructed putt from that tree, but that's where you want to be after 2 shots is on the green. Connor has a beautiful forehand after getting through a fairly tight gap. Unfortunately, that is for par after his first few throws not going the way he wanted. Jordan has a clear line to the basket for his third shot. And finally up to Brian's tee shot. Lots of distance off of the tee, setting himself up with a very easy approach. And that will be a birdie to start. And we'll see if Chris can also get one here. Just a bit low for Chris. Good par save for Jordan. I believe both Brian and Connor are pretty close. And this will bring Brian to 8 down, tied with Chris after just 1 hole. So, tie ball game. Chris with his signature putt. Couple of pars, 1 good birdie by Brian, and we'll move over to hole 2. It is a par 4 at 423 feet. Off the tee, fairly narrow gap. You want to probably throw a forehand or a backhand turnover, getting over this log. More distance you can get up by the short pin is a good position to be. and then another kind of wall of trees that you're trying to get through, and then get up to this fairly guarded green, avoid the out of bounds road on the right, and you should be able to card a birdie on this hole. Of course, playing through the woods is always a little bit tighter than it looks like on camera, so we'll see how these players are able to attack it. Brian going backhand turnover, catching a late tree, but that was almost at the ground, so pretty good shot. Just about at the landing zone you're looking for. Chris Villa also going with the backhand turnover. Ooh, too much turn. Catches an early tree. And Connor, same exact thing. So where those two shots are, it's going to be almost impossible to get the birdie from there. Not far enough around the corner, but definitely still parable. Jordan gets through almost up to where Brian's shot was, but maybe a little pinched off from that big tree. Oh, Connor catching another tree. So he's still going to have some work to do to get up and down for his par. Chris a little bit further into the woods, finding a line. Gets more distance than Connor, but he's going to be still a little bit cut off. Connor getting through all the way clean, but just not an open enough shot to get all the way up to the basket. He might have a long look to save his par. And Jordan opting to go tighter to the left side. Doesn't quite get all the way up there. And again, Brian with the farthest drive of the group. Goes outside all the trees. And there he is. That's in the circle. Probably 20-25 feet. So Chris again turns it over and probably maybe circle's edge. Probably wanted that to flex back a little bit. But that patent pending is not the easiest shot to get your angles correct every time. Ooh, Connor giving it a good bid after looked like maybe a little bit of a grip issue for Jordan. Slips out of his hand and hits a tree pretty close and off the top of the basket for Jordan. Great bid. That was to save his par. And here's Chris to save his. Little high and right. That's going to be a tough ask for the basket to catch there. And Brian with the only birdie opportunity. Not able to get it around. That is a pretty large tree. Before we switched to that camera, we saw Brian straddling both ways. He landed pretty much right in the middle of that tree. Couldn't figure out which way he wanted to go. He decided to try to go turn over and wasn't able to get it around. Still able to save the par. And honestly, gaining a stroke on the rest of the card, even with a par. So after 2 holes, Brian 1 down but gains 2 strokes on everybody else. So he is now in the lead. As we move over to hole 3, par 3, 290 feet. Straight gap to the right is much narrower. That is the way the drone is flying. Cutting over to the left side where it's a little bit wider. But the backhand really has to be a flippy disc to stay straight all the way and slightly downhill with an out of bounds road behind. Brian up first. Going maybe right in between the 2 lines. Maybe trying to flex it to the right side. Catches the middle tree, kicks left. And Chris looked like he got further up there, but kicked kind of forward and right. And that's a little bit more what you're looking for. But again, without a flippy enough disc, that's just going to keep crashing to the left. And Jordan going with that tight outside line. Get some good ground play. He's probably in the circle. Yeah, he's pretty much parked. That's a 12-footer for his birdie. Get back the one from the last hole. Oh, Brian, in the jungle of little tiny trees, catches one of them. And that should work. He's back in position. Unfortunately, that's going to be for 4. And while we're there, we actually saw that small little tree that Brian hit split his disc. So after just 3 holes, not even 3 holes, he's already 1 disc down. So unfortunate for him, but obviously plenty of other discs. But his go-to putter, he will be without. So good birdie for Jordan, bringing him back tied with Connor and back to where he started at the beginning of the round. And here is Brian to save the bogey. Fortunately, limiting the damage. Is now only tied for the lead instead of having it outright. Connor with a good par save after being out of position. And Chris coming over to tap in his par as well. Ooh, catching a little rim there on that unique putting style, but there are no pictures on the scorecard, as they say, but it was on video. Sorry, Chris. As we move over to hole 4, maybe the straightest hole you'll see on a lot of courses. Par 3, 251 feet. The light at the end of the tunnel is what you're aiming for. And if you can miss all the trees to get there and throw this slightly uphill shot, you should be able to get the birdie. But obviously easier said than done, as right off the bat we see Jordan not able to get the height correct. It looked like he was holding his hand or wiping the sweat off of his hand. Maybe having a little bit of grip issues, as Chris throws a pretty good shot, and then even luckier as it gets kind of off the fairway and comes back in. He's probably a few steps outside the circle, and we'll have a look at his birdie. If that keeps drifting, it finishes a little bit at the end, but that was looking pretty good for Connor. Very hot today, very humid, close to 90 degrees. So we saw a little bit, like I said, from Jordan with the grip issues. So definitely something to keep in mind these players are dealing with. Brian kicks early left as well, makes it a little bit further than Jordan at least. And good recovery shot for Jordan, and he'll have a short putt to save his par. See the graphic down below. HyzerMedia has an Instagram. We post updates of the things we're filming, courses we're at, and then of course highlights from all of the rounds that we cover, little short clips. So if you want to check that out, head over to Instagram, and we are at Hyzer_media. These guys kind of just pitching up, not quite close enough to get bid. I think Brian is going to be running it, and does. Great putt for Brian. Saving the par, and this is Chris for his birdie. Oh, it sails it over the basket. Chris usually pretty dead on from that distance and in, but having some putting, I won't call them troubles, I'll call them inconsistencies for the first few holes. Obviously a lot of golf left for him to correct it. So everybody else tapping out their pars. And we'll move over to hole 5, par 3, 265 feet. The key here is to get over this fallen log and then down to the ground. As we see, it slopes away very quickly and then drops off to the out-of-bounds creek behind. So speed control, definitely the key here. We'll see if these players are able to do it. Coming in a little high, but real floaty and short, and that hangs on. Good shot for Jordan. And you have to, like I said, really get something going slow. Probably putter only, maybe mid-range. Chris taking it a little bit wider and lower, so that was probably a mid-range for him. But hitting the ground to slow it down enough. So he should have an inside of the circle look as well. Connor kicking off a tree to the left side, I believe, but short of that fallen log. And Brian looked like maybe he went with a higher speed disc, but thrown softer. Got a little bit of that skip, maybe hoping to roll down the hill, but did not make it. Oh, and Connor over the edge. I believe that hung on, but just barely. The creek is a little low this time of year, so he was able to land on some of the rocks, and of course the rule being, unless your disc is completely surrounded by water, then it's not out of bounds, or if there's a clear marking, which there wasn't for this hole. It was playing as water. He wasn't in, so no penalty stroke, but then obviously we just saw him miss the putt as well, so he'll have a comebacker for a bogey. And now Jordan for his birdie. So 2 in a row, bringing Jordan back up to within 2 of the lead for the moment. Chris also has a putt, not even a putt, just the Villa flip to get his stroke that he lost a couple holes ago back to where he began. It is an interesting looking tree. As we move over to hole 6, par 3, 272 feet. Throwing over that same creek, up the elevated fairway a little bit, out into the open. You really want to try to get on top of this rock formation. If you want to have a good look at a birdie, you adjust to the bottom of it, you're going to have a long uphill look at it. As Jordan almost gets the height right, tends to fall just at the last second. Just puring the gap, but either too much hyzer or too stable of a disc. Still a fine shot, but just going to be a long look for the birdie. Brian throwing something a bit flippier. Didn't quite have the height. A little bit more height. Brian's disc may have obviously been high enough to get up top, but then also had the stability to come back. Somewhere in between Brian and Connor's 2 drives probably would have got that. So none of these guys are very close. But if Chris is the furthest away and has this look at it, it's still a pretty good group of drives. And looks like he didn't really want any part of running that. Just lays it up under the basket, take the par, move on. Pretty smart for having the lead for the moment. Connor maybe giving it a half bid. Lands in a similar position. Chris. Brian definitely running it, but a little bit right side. Still probably close enough, shouldn't have an issue. And Jordan with the best look. Oh, leaves it just a bit low. Well, it was a little bit away, but again, should have no issues. And if Brian is the furthest away, we're probably looking like a par frame here. So, a bit of a slow start for these guys. This is playing as a fairly hard course today, some hot conditions, but earlier in the day there was some high scoring, especially by Chris and Brian. So let's see if these guys can kick it into gear as we move over to hole 7, par 3, 287 feet. Got to get it over both of these logs, and there's also a couple of tight gap trees they're trying to hit it through. So short hole, but pretty difficult. Jordan up first, little wide, catches the outside of that tree as he was actually coming back. Looked like it might have worked out had that disc not caught the tree. Chris looked like he got over the first log, but not the second. Brian looking a little better, needs to stable up. Looks like caught the wrong side of the tree but skipped forward, so he might be almost pin high, but outside of the circle to the right. And Connor's been pulling his drives the last few holes, but that one looked like it worked out. Got through some of the leaves, and he will probably have a putt for his birdie. And that was Jordan throwing from the middle of a bush, and from what he had, that was actually a pretty decent forehand to get to where he is now. Chris giving it a bid. Looked like he didn't quite like it out of his hand. And Brian actually has a little gap. Catching a couple leaves may have slowed his disc down just enough. And Connor with, I believe, his first birdie of the round. Maybe a second, getting him back to almost where he started. A couple of early bogeys for him, but trending in the right direction now. Chris sneaks it over the rim, as the rest of these guys are just tapping out the pars. And we'll move over to hole 8. Par 3, 240 feet. This gap that the drone is flying through now is the likely gap they'll be going for. They can also go a little bit wider to the left, but either way they're probably throwing some kind of backhand flex so it finishes away from this out of bounds creek on the right side. Short hole, only 240, so certainly reachable with putter or mid-range, but maybe a fairway driver thrown slower to make sure the disc finishes left. Connor, worried about maybe pulling it again, goes with an overcorrection and a little too stable on the inside. Jordan with incredible ground play, completely straight, and then skips maybe another 100 feet almost on the ground. And this looks like more traditional line. Maybe a little too stable. But Chris, I believe is maybe circle's edge. Oh. Brian, I believe he is not out of bounds. Gets a second kick that kicks him back into the fairway, and then that throw obviously kicks him to the other side. So this is throwing 3 now. Oh, it needs to come back. Oh, that didn't have the right angle on it, so he will unfortunately go out of bounds on that throw. And this is Jordan for birdie. Oh, nice putt. Little high, but just floaty enough that it hit the top of the chains and fell in, so. That was Connor's birdie bid, a little low, and here's Chris's. Oh, higher than Connor's, but still not high enough. And yeah, there we see Brian's disc. So sad, laying in the mud. But he takes his relief, makes the putt, but it's for the unfortunate double bogey. So that will drop him to second place on the card, and gives Chris Villa now a 2-stroke lead over Jordan, who's birdied, I believe, 3 out of the last 4 holes, and is making a push for Chris's lead. Hole 9 is par 3, 293 feet. You can go kind of straight at the basket the way we're looking now, or a little bit wider of a forehand or backhand turnover line. Either way, you want to kind of use these trees or the ground to slow you down in time. And hopefully you're in the circle with a shot for your birdie. So Jordan going with a very understable disc. And that's well to the right of the basket. That's going to be a difficult up and down from there. And Connor going with a unorthodox line inside the first 2 trees on a forehand flex shot. But got a big skip and looks like he might be up there somewhere. And Chris's shot was looking beautiful. Flexed over, started to come back. Catches a late tree. Probably the last one he needed to miss for that line. And he's probably going to be kicked over by where Jordan is. And Brian catching another early tree. He's been having a little bit of trouble off the tee the last few holes. But pretty good recovery shot. Maybe a little obstructed, but he should have a look. Save his par. And that again was Jordan from inside of the bush. But another great out. And he's all but parked to save his par. Chris. Ooh. Good bid. He's scaring this basket from a ways away today. But not able to cash any yet. Connor just a little outside. Ooh, but good putt. Stays in there for Brian. Jordan getting his par. Connor and Chris basically have their lies on top of each other, so that is going to do it for us on the front 9. Chris is coming over just to tap in, or Villa flip his way into the back 9. Thank you all for watching. I hope you join us over there. There's some exciting disc golf left to come as the conclusion of this tournament comes about. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to HyzerMedia's channel. We post lots of tournament coverage, course breakdowns, lots of other types of disc golf content. We also have a podcast called HyzerCast, Disc Golf Podcast. If you'd like to check that out, we post weekly episodes. Other than that, we will see you on the next hole.